very warm welcome to all our followers. Welcome again to another weekly wrap of Turkish football. I've got my fellow pundits, Mehmet, and a new one in Batuhan. A very warm welcome to both of you. Batuhan, welcome to the team.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on board.
Great to have you on board as well. We'll be looking forward to your comments and your expertise. Batuhan's got a background in coaching, so we will delve into a bit more tactics side of football. Mems, good to see you on board as well. And I know you've got a couple of interesting topics to bring up this week.
Yeah, thanks, folks. Thanks. We've got a few interesting ones. Welcome, Batuhan, firstly as well. It's amazing to have you on.
And we'll dwell straight into it, guys. We'll start with this week's first one with Trabzonspor and Göztepe. It was a 4-2 victory for the Karadeniz equipe, and they're storming along at the moment. And I'll go straight to you, Batuhan. Trabzonspor, again, another comprehensive victory. They are now 21 weeks at the top of the table, and the club record is 22, which they last did in 1980. So it's going all well there. Can you break this game down for us?
Yeah, I mean, Trabzon's been on form since the season sort of started, with Abdullah coming in and then the new signings. I mean, despite going down 1-0 around the 30th minute mark, making it into 2-2. It was a bit of an interesting game going 2-2 into the first half, but obviously with the experience and the tactical changes that Abdullah did, Trabzon came out winners 4-2. Well deserved, I believe, with the football that they've been sort of displaying since in charge. And when you look at sort of Abdullah Avcı's also previous experiences, even with Başakşehir, he's always had a consistent team, but just never sort of got to the finish line. And this time it looks like Trabzon's going to take it home.
Yeah, you're right. And he's obviously brought on board Edin Miska with him, who's had another great game again, another couple of assists. Mems, I'm going to throw it over to you. Wakame, another goal and another assist, 11 goals and 10 assists, the most goal contributions this year. How's his form been? And Abdulkadir as well, getting 2 goals as well this week.
Yeah, I mean, coming into the season, Abdulkadir was a bit of a controversial one, obviously, because of his injuries in the last few years. Even when he was selected for the Milli Takım under Şenol Güneş, it was a bit of a question mark, but I think he's proved all of his critics. I think he's proved himself to all of his critics. This season, he's having an amazing season. I don't think there's much to talk about Wakame. He's like fine wine, just gets better as he ages. And that's how we've seen him at Trabzonspor as well now, He's been here for a few years, and it just gets better and better. And this year, it's that championship year. They're only 12 points away from it now in 10 weeks, which is a ridiculous result. And yeah, he's definitely the main man.
Yeah, and you've sort of hit the nail on the head. It's 15 points to Konyaspor in second, 20 points to Fener in third. So they're well in truly on top at the moment. And just on Abdulkadir, I think it was early this year where he was, or at the end of last year, where he was actually booed at one of the Trabzon home games. So it's been a massive recovery from him. And hopefully, we can see that form translate across to the national team. We're moving forward, talking about young talent. This next game in Antalya and Fenerbahçe, Alanya Rava, seen a 17-year-old star with a goal and an assist. That man on screen, Arda Güler, he came on in the 74th minute. He scored and shortly after assisted Berisha. He becomes the youngest goal scorer in Fenerbahçe's history. How do you find this man, Batuhan, and where do you see him in the future?
Oh, looks such great talent. You got to sort of congratulate Fenerbahçe for bringing such a quality player out of their ranks in their youth system. The fact that he's only 17, coming in the last 15 minutes, assisting and scoring, just sort of proves what sort of talent he's going to be in the next couple of years. And he's not even at the peak of his football as well. Hopefully, coming on to next year, hopefully with the new coach that Fenerbahce will have, as we know, they most likely won't be continuing on with Ismail Kartal, that, Arda Güler is an important player, a key player for when they're rebuilding for next year. But I think give him 2 to 3 years, maybe even less, and we might even see him in Europe, hopefully.
Yeah, and hopefully for Turkish football's sake, he's had such a great impact and probably one of the limelights of Fenerbahce's season. Mems, going back to you, and thank you, Gökhan, for your kind message. We appreciate, and this is why we do the show weekly. Going back to you, Mems, Altay Bayındır, he had 9 saves, the most in his career. And he assisted. It's the first assist from a goalkeeper in the league since Tolga Zengin in 2014. He actually mentioned it on beIN Sports where he assisted Demba. So it's fresh in his memory. It doesn't happen a lot, so goalkeepers won't forget these days. How do you find his performance?
So Altay Bayındır, as a performance, I think that was an amazing performance. Just like it week in, week out, it begs the question, if he wasn't injured for 2 months, would Fener have still had a chance? Would they still be in that race? Obviously, Trabzonspor has been superior this whole season. But, the inexperience of Berke, some of the goals he's conceded, some of the points they dropped. For example, there was one against Sivasspor that I don't think I'd ever forget, was a free kick and he slipped it out of his hand. So not saying he's a bad keeper. I think it's the inexperience. And I think Altay is the main player of the team. And so what I found interesting about this game is, and it does involve Altay as well, is that I still can't decide if Fener played good or not. They won 5-2. They scored 5 goals against Alanyaspor, their first win against Alanya in 3 years, if I'm not wrong. But then, you look at Altay, he's broken his career record for the most saves in one game. And just coming back to that assist, Ismail Kartal, actually, the manager, he came out after the game and he said, we meant that. We trained that. That was all practice, We knew that Francesco Ferrioli's teams always play a high line, and that's how we wanted to play. So, yeah, I can't decide if Fener played good or not, but this man definitely, without a doubt, one of the best 2 keepers in the league. But he's definitely up there. And just like Batuhan said about Arda, I think Altay, we will see him in Europe very soon as well.
I'll beg the question to both of you guys then. If you were the Turkish manager, would you start this man in goals, or would you start Urcan at Trabzonspor? Which of the two would you prefer at the minute?
If I was to start, I'd probably say Urcan. I think he's more composed when he's playing. Altay, I feel like he's a good keeper, but I feel like he gets excited, but he still gets a start. He gets his job done. Whereas Urcan is very composed when he's playing. He's very calm and collected. So that would be my choice. But I wouldn't be worried if Urcan wasn't able to play, because I'd have Altay right behind him.
Interesting. Batuhan, what do you think?
It sort of reminds me of a bit of a Victor Valdez and Ilkay Casillas sort of comparison, even when in Spain. I think they're both great quality keepers, but for me, Urcan would take it just a little bit more in terms of his foot technique, his distribution, his reflexes, and obviously his experience as well. That he's currently had with Trabzonspor and over the years with the Milli Takım, that sort of pushes Urcan ahead of Altay for me at the moment, but not far off. The fact that we've got 2 good keepers, or probably even 3, especially in the Milli Takım going forward, it's exceptional. I mean, back when a couple of years ago, you'd maybe have one as a starter and your backup was very iffy. You were sort of hoping that, your first choice wasn't getting injured. Whereas now, if Urcan is injured, you still sort of got insurance in the back.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely. I've seen him got Altay all the way. And just on that topic of these goalkeepers actually moving over to Europe, I think the biggest quality-wise, what they're lacking to sort of make that next step is what you mentioned about the foot technique and the distribution. Because like there's keepers in the Premier League who are almost like playmakers at the back. We see Edison heavily involved in the build-up play from the back. We see Alisson in his similar role at Liverpool, whereas our goalkeepers are more known to be shot stoppers, very good reflex reactions, but they sort of lack that, quickly opening it up and having that vision. So I think if that's probably one area they can improve on. But we'll move on. And just on that note, that's Fenerbahce's actually third away victory on the trot. So 13 points of their last 15. So they're finding some form towards the latter stages of the season. Moving on to the game of the round, the derby at Seyran Tepe. There was much talk about the time of the game, and we eventually got there. And that man on screen there, Kerem Aktürkoğlu, waved his magic wand. He scored a brace, and Galatasaray got all 3 points. Now, I'll throw it to you firstly. Kerem Aktürkoğlu, as you can see in the second picture as well, waving his wand. How did you find his performance, and how did you find this derby overall?
I want to start with Kerem. It baffles me how someone can come from the third division, from the fourth tier of Turkish football, come to one of the biggest teams in Turkish football, and just dictate everything like this at such, I'm not going to say he's young, but at such, he's not old as well. He's 20, 22, 23, something along those lines. So how can someone come with that much confidence and dictate the game this much? You've got an all-important game against Besiktas. You've just played Barcelona 2 days ago where, again, he almost scored, and he's seen as his team's most important player for the Barcelona game tomorrow night. So, and he's just come from the Üçüncü Lig last season. So this baffles me. I think he's one of our important players, and performance-wise, again, nothing to say. 2 goals. He was the difference between the two teams. But yeah, going to the game in general, there was a lot of controversy before the game about the game time. Galatasaray wanted the game to be postponed due to the Barcelona games. Besiktas didn't accept, and obviously the federation didn't accept for that reason as well, because both teams have to agree. So there was a lot of tension coming into the game. And, I think this might have just fired Galatasaray up even more because it was your typical derby. There was a lot of action, 3 goals, and, an interesting game.
Yeah, and I think you've sort of nailed it on its head there. It was a very dominant performance from Galatasaray. It was a very different approach to the team that played at the new camp 3 days prior. And I'm going to go to you, Batuhan, on this. Gala actually came out willing to sort of attack and played a different sort of game. Mustafa Mohamed, he had 2 assists. He's sort of transitioned the way he's playing now. He's sort of more dynamic. He's more involved in the game. He's working hard. He was favoured over that man on screen, Buffettini Gomis. And Kerem Aktürkoğlu, going back to him, he had 7 shots, 4 on target. So he had plenty of shots. He's sort of transitioning more into a central forward sort of position. How did you find Torrent's structure and the way they came out in this game?
Look, obviously, Galatasaray has currently got 2 different DNAs, one in Europe and one in the league. When you look at Europe, haven't conceded a goal away, still undefeated in 7 games, finished the group first. You go to Nou Camp playing in front of 70,000 people. First time Barcelona haven't scored a goal in 18 games, and you come back 0-0 back to Adi Samian. I've got to sort of congratulate Dominic Torrent in his analysis that he's done for both oppositions. Obviously, he's sort of kept the European League DNA or style of play to what Fatih Terim did before they departed ways with the club, which I thought was a smart move. But, again, you're playing in front of 50, 55,000 people at Adi Samian. The fact that Galatasaray dominated the first half, got the result that they wanted with, Mustafa Mohamed assisting, Kerem obviously scoring 2 quality goals, especially the second one as he makes a run into the front post, gets a head onto it. And then second, and that's sort of another reason why Beşiktaş had to make the changes with Önder Hoca, because they didn't have the answers and the solutions that Galatasaray caused first half. I mean, I believe there was 2 substitutes on the 39th minute. So Kenan Karaman, who's a Milli Takım player, as well as Güven Yalçın, who's an Altyapı player. So come second half, Galatasaray took the pedal off the gas a little bit, pretty comfortable, not many threats from Beşiktaş, until they pretty much scored that sort of last-minute goal with Rudman. I think it was around the 85th minute. But this is the Galatasaray that a lot of people sort of miss, especially when you watch it from TV and you're at the stadium. That first half performance, that, the high press, not allowing the opposition to breathe, winning the ball quickly, transitioning quickly, forward play, combining out wide, then coming in central is what we sort of play. But I thought it was a fantastic win. Great morale booster for the fans, who are also divided as well with what's been happening. And now sort of awaiting for the Barcelona game. It's sort of some interesting times. It could be a bit of a transition that we might be seeing as well.
Yeah, definitely. And Dominic Torrent, it was actually his first game in his first 9 where he wasn't trailing and eventually winning the game. So that was interesting to watch. Let's listen to the gaffer. Let's see what he had to say during the post-conference interview.
Galatasaray daha çok ilk yarıda oynayan Galatasaray. Ona çok daha benziyor. Barcelona'ya karşı çıkardığımız oyundan gerçekten memnun olmak gerekiyor. Çünkü daha sonraki maçında 4-0 bir de Osasuna'ya yendi. Avrupa'nın şu anda benim kendi şahsi fikrim en iyi 5 takımından biri olan bir takıma karşı bu kadar iyi oynadığın zaman tabii ki de
piensas que si tienes dificultades lo puedes hacer contra otro equipo.
Eğer hani bir zorlukla karşılaşırsan diğer takımlara karşı da bunu yapabilirsin diye düşünmeye başlıyorsun.
And there you go, Dominic Torrent talking about Barcelona. Now, guys, obviously there's a second leg not too far away now, probably under 30 hours now. How do you find that game? Barcelona will probably still head in as favourites. It's nil also. The scores are level. How do you guys sort of see it panning out?
Look, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for Galatasaray to take advantage of this situation that we've sort of created for ourselves in a positive manner. You're coming back to Istanbul, Nilol, in front of 55,000 fans, and you know how Turkish supporters are. I'm pretty sure from the word or from what I've been sort of reading up, there is going to be a bit of a show at Ali Samian. So I think Barcelona will definitely see hell this time, but I'd say it's 50-50. I think Xavi's definitely will be making a couple of changes. I think Aubameyang will be starting as well, because I know he brought him back in about the 65th minute in the first game. He wasn't expecting the game to be played out like this, but sort of got to give credit to Galatasaray and being able to analyse the opposition on how they play and what they do. I mean, we know Barcelona love to have the ball. Yes, it might not be the Pep Guardiola tiki-taka style, but they still like to hold possession, utilise the wide players. As you saw, they were always using Traore's side, that quick 1v1 situations, cutting in, trying to get crosses in. But look, anything can happen, I think. And the fact that now that there's no away goal as well, could even go into penalties. Hopefully it doesn't. I'm hoping, I'm praying that Galatasaray come out winners. It points towards Turkey as well in terms of how many clubs we're going to have in the Champions League competition. But I think with the game style that we might be seeing from Galatasaray could be very similar to what we did at Camp Nou, but I think we could potentially bring the game at them more. More playing direct, more utilising Kerem. I don't think Baba will be starting. I think Gomes potentially will be starting as well in replacement for Mohamed. Someone that can hold up the ball, that's got the physique. I mean, you saw what he sort of did with the offside goal as well, how he just turned his body, the muscle, gets in front of the player, on shot on target. So will be a very similar starting 11, but I think we'll only see maybe 1 to 2 changes, especially when you've got 55,000 fans jumping at once. I think Barcelona can be a little bit intimidated in this aspect. There's a lot of youngsters that have come through the La Masia Academy. Yes, they've got a couple of experienced players like your Aubameyangs and Traore's on board as well. But I think with the push of the supporters and that atmosphere, Galatasaray could potentially come out winners on top.
Yeah, and I think you've sort of answered Ahmed's question there, which I'll read out. Lads, thoughts on tactically Galatasaray will approach this game? Will they sit back and absorb pressure and try to get Barca on the counter? Or will they go toe-to-toe and roll the dice and implement a high press to get the first goal? So I think sort of in that snippet from Batuhan, I think they'll be playing a bit more positively than the first leg. The first leg saw a very conservative Galatasaray come out and hold on to a very impressive result, keeping Barca scoreless at their home is quite a feat itself. So with the help of the fans, I think they will be playing more positively. Mems, did you want to add to that comment of Ahmed, and do you see a similar sort of game style that we're predicting tomorrow night?
Yeah, so for my comment, I think I'm going to start from the first game. I've just got the lineup in front of me now. I think I like the idea of starting with Feghouli and Babel, 2 players who have that experience in Europe, and then you've got Kerem, who is your weapon basically. So I think Galatasaray will come out with that same sort of lineup, the more experienced lineup that can sit back. Defensively, again, as Batuhan said, amazing. But yes, I do agree with Batuhan. I think this is how I would have tried playing as a coach as well, to sit back and play on the counter. So, try to actually get Barca on the counter this time, obviously, instead of playing for a draw. But, if Peña's on his game like he was last week, he conceded an unlucky goal over the weekend. But, if he's on his game like he was last week, Marcao, Nelson, Van Aanholt, and Sacha Bowie had an amazing game. I think why not? They're coming to Istanbul, to Adana, 55,000 fans. One thing I would want to question is, would Eric Pulgar start? Because, out of that whole game last week that I was very impressed by, it was a result I wasn't expecting. I must say that I wasn't really impressed with Thailand and particularly Berkan.
Yeah, and they actually had great games on the weekend, the 2 of them, because Besiktas actually went for a change at halftime. They got Joseph back into the game because Berkan and Thailand were actually really controlling events in the first half. So there you have it for the Barcelona game. I'm predicting, I'm thinking Gala should also approach it. You don't really want to be overly positive as well. Keep that conservative approach, but play on the counter and use the home fans to your advantage. And Barca will be the team that's expected to win. So let them bring their game to you and get them on the counter, I reckon. Moving on, let's going back to the Besiktas front. they only had one shot on target this week against Galatasaray. They had a very poor display. Önder Hoca had a few comments to say after the game about the performance. We'll just watch that quickly.
Çok yukarılara çıkarılıyorsa kaybedilen maçta da sorumluluk başta bana ait. Tercihlerim, değişiklikler, oyun başlangıcı bütün bunları sayabilirsiniz. Hiç problem yok. Ama ben planladığımız şeylerin yerine gelmemesi konusunda biraz üzgünüm. Çünkü beklediğimiz, öngördüğümüz durum oluştu. Buna hazırlıklıydık ama yerine getiremedik. Oyuncu tercihleriyle alakalı da kazanıldığında tercihler doğru ama kaybedildiğinde tercihler yanlış olarak nitelendiriliyor. Ne yazık ki doğasında bu var. Ben yanlış bir tercihte bulunduğumu düşünmüyorum. Bir önceki maçı referans alarak en doğru, en uygun olduğunu düşündüğümüz takımla çıktığımızı düşünüyorum.
There you sort of have it. He mentioned the squad selections I was talking about. Batuhan, I'm going to throw it to you about the squad selection, but I really like his demeanor. He's very polite. He's a gentleman. How do you sort of see the gaffer's choices? And I'm going to sort of open the topic a bit more. Do you still see him in charge come season end?
Look, you got to give him credit for what he's done. You know, he's come from under 19s coach. He's never had any senior experience before, and I think he's given a positive outcome to Beşiktaş. Yes, some results may have not gone their way, but again, you know, you've bought someone within yourself from the Altyapı. He's the interim head coach at the moment. And the fact that he believes in our youngsters and he's giving the youngsters an opportunity. I mean, it's so rare that in Turkish football you'll see clubs give youngsters an opportunity. Unfortunately, we're not really producing young talents that maybe we were 5 to 10 years ago. So now that we're seeing this, it's fantastic. But, you know, it's also sad to see that as soon as the result doesn't go your way, there's comments made by supporters or the unit team, the committee members, and, you know, it's the head coaches that are sort of sitting on the rocking chair. I don't think he'll be there next season. Will he be maybe an assistant? I'm not too sure, but I think from out of all the big four clubs, Beşiktaş, you know, Fener and Galatasaray, I think they'll be going through a bit of a major change coming into next season. You know, especially with the finances that's currently happening in Turkey. Selling players is an issue, buying players is an issue. So what do we have to resort back to? Altyapı, your youth development. And if you can't produce, well, it's just constantly money going out. And then unfortunately we end up in these sort of situations. But again, hats off, you know, and that's the sort of, he definitely gets my respect in the sense of, you know, bringing Altyapı players into the 11. I think as coaches and as big coaches, you need to sort of take that risk as well. You know, we see it with Mourinho, we've seen it with Klopp and Pep in their days. I mean, even Fatih Terim, who's probably maybe one of the coach in Turkish football that constantly backs youth development, youth players. Ozan Kabak, I think, played, half a year at Galatasaray and then got sold for 11 million. So it proves a point.
Yeah. And there is a couple of players that Önder has sort of brought forward that we hadn't previously heard. Obviously, Sergen brought Rıdvan Yılmaz into the picture, which Önder has persisted with. The likes of Emirhan, Emre Bilgin in the squad as well. And from what I hear, he's been getting more youngsters joining with the senior squad training. So he is.
There's also Can Bozdoğan.
Can Bozdoğan as well, who's a little bit older than the other boys that I mentioned. I think he's about 20, which he was actually introduced at the start of the year with Sergen Hoca.
Well,
Mem,
you gotta back these boys, or else they're not going to be able to get the experience that they need, you know. And especially at big clubs like Besiktas and Fener and Galatasaray, that's got 20-25 million supporters. The opportunity needs to be given, you know.
now, there was
Exactly.
talk. I'm going to refer to comments made by Ismail Kartal actually after the Alanya game. Ali Koch himself personally approached him and said that he would like to see youth players joining in senior squad training more often in the this last couple of months of the season end. There was one name in particular which he mentioned, which was Fener's new signing from the academy of Benfica by the name of Isak Vural. He's very much talked about. He's already got 50,000 Instagram followers at the age of 16. So, how do you guys sort of see the implementation of youth players sort of moving across to a more professional environment with the senior players?
I think all I have to say about it is that it's sad that the clubs had to come to this financial situation to be able to finally be able to come out and say, "Hey, this actually works." Because, you know, even on the year that Mbappe won the World Cup with France, we had Turkish clubs and coaches saying that our 24-year-olds aren't experienced enough, you know, and they're not going to gain experience by playing PlayStation. They're going to gain experience by being on the pitch. And again, looking at Fener, and we just spoke about Arda Güler before. Arda Güler isn't just exciting because he's young. He's exciting because he's the top performer in the team, and he's only 17. And you've got, Mesut Özil, who everyone talks about. You've got İrfan Can Kahveci, Mert Hakan, the likes of all of these players, Jose Sosa, and a 17-year-old is a top performer. So I think it's just sad that the clubs had to come to this situation financially before they could finally think about playing some young players and adapting them into the squad.
Yeah, I think that comment merits a lot of. It's got grounds because right now, if you were to pick out of those list of players you mentioned, Özil, İrfan Can, Mert Hakan, you could argue that Arda should start ahead of all of them because he's probably been the more consistent player in the last couple of months. İrfan Can's almost out every second week, and Mert Hakan's up and down. Özil's really nowhere to be seen. Sosa's not the same player he once was. Batuhan, your thoughts on integrating the youth players into the senior squad system?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a bit of a tricky one. I mean, Galatasaray tried to do that this year, and there's been sort of mixed comments, about obviously the performance and where they sort of kind of stand. But I think if you have a mixture of experienced players along with the youth and the youngsters that they can sort of look up to, then it could be a bit of a good blend and good chemistry. Again, we definitely need to stand by these youngsters. It can't be where one coach comes in, he starts playing, and then a new coach comes in, whether he's an interim or a takeover, and then he's left, he's on the bench or he's training with the Puff Tuckum. So coming back to what you boys were sort of saying with, Mesut Özil and İrfan Can and all that, Turkey is a sort of retirement village. Do you know what I mean? Everyone sort of comes here, collects their money, plays football for a little bit, to whatever they can, and that's it. But you've got a youngster like Arda Güler who's hungry and he wants to succeed, and and Fener is probably the team that he's supported since he was little. 100% he's going to perform more than the others. I mean, up until now, what has Mesut really done since he's come? Besides being his name and the marketing tool that he is, he hasn't really impacted Turkish football as we would have liked, unfortunately. But I'd stand by him. I'd stand by Ismail Kartal playing him week in, week out, or giving him as much minutes as he can.
Yeah, definitely, guys. We'll slowly move away from that conversation. I want to bring up another topic, which was massive headlines last week in the Turkish media. It was the announcement of a massive overhaul in the referee roster, which saw about 13 referees lose their positions. And we've got a couple of popular figures there with Cüneyt and Fırat Aydınus amongst this list. And there is also talks of female referees being introduced from next season onwards. Mems, I know you've been following this one closely. How do you see this massive overhaul and change in the roster?
So I think we have to take two different looks at it. I mean, it's interesting the fact that Cüneyt Çakır and Cüneyt Çakır, we do know that he's one of the best referees in the world, ranking wise. So it's an official statement when you say that he's one of the best referees in the world. We also do know that the TFF changed the laws, the rules, for Fırat Aydınus at the start of the year, because in Turkey you're not allowed to ref after the age of 46 or 47, if I'm not wrong. And they changed the laws to fit Fırat Aydınus so he can ref. So it was interesting that especially these two, but the likes of all these people like Ali Palabıyık, Bahattin Şimşek, all these people we've been seeing over the years. Hüseyin Göçek, I think I've known him as a referee ever since I was a kid. So I think Turkish football deserves an explanation as to why these guys were offloaded. But on the other end, I want to talk about our women's refs. We've been following the women's the women's leagues. Obviously, we've got our some of our top referees here in Gamze Durmuş and Neslihan Muratdağ, who we posted about the other day. We like to call them, the top of the ranking in female referees. And TFF announced a day later that women referees will be in the Super League from next week onwards. And this is being led by, obviously, the first ever woman referee in Turkey, who's now a pundit for beIN Sports, Lale Orta. So it's an exciting thing. I mean, just 3-4 months ago, having a chat, having these conversations in our interviews with, Büşra Kenet, with Hakan Anaz, it was always like, why aren't women involved? And just the improvements we're seeing over the last few months is amazing. And I personally can't wait to see female refs in Turkey, because we're seeing it all over the world. And I think our referees are really good. No disrespect to Gamze, but Neslihan Muratdağ is one of our top referees. Both these referees will be refereeing at the Women's Under-17 European Championship this year. So I think we do have very quality women referees. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's exciting to hear, and I really wonder how it's going to pan out, because imagine seeing one of these faces at a derby. We got 55,000 fans, so it'd be interesting how they would sort of manage that. Batuhan, the likes of Cüneyt Çakır, Fırat Aydınus, they're massive on missions. Will we miss them, or do we need this refreshing change?
It's an interesting one. I mean, Turkish football is going through a bit of an interesting phase at the moment over the last couple of years. It's sort of hard to see. They're doing a bit of a massive cleanup. A part of me thinks that we will miss them, but then a part of me thinks that we also do need new faces that haven't been sort of recycled within the football industry. I mean, week in, week out, all the clubs and the coaches and even the presidents are always complaining about the referees and the VAR system. So maybe it is a bit of a time for change. But, like the big names of Cüneyt Çakır, who's been in the World Cups and the Champions Leagues, it's definitely an interesting topic. And I think we'll probably have a bit more of a clear view on this probably at the end of the year, personally, or coming into the new year, whether we did the right thing or not.
Yeah. And just on that mention of Lale Orta, if for those interested, on beIN Sport, they do a weekly program with the likes of Bülent Yıldırım, Deniz Çoban, and Lale Orta, where the three of them get together. They watch game by game, and they go over important decision referee calls, and it's quite informative, and they sort of break down, because often, most of the times, VAR is questioned as to why they weren't intervening, because there's only certain instances where VAR can actually get involved. So we might see names like Cüneyt Çakır and Fırat Aydınus helping in the background, and hopefully they do, and help train the new generation of referees moving forward. Let's just quickly wrap up this week of the Super League with the fixtures, with the remainder of the games. The first game of the week actually saw Hatay come out 3-0 winners to Fatih Karagümrük. A much-needed win for Altay against league bottom of the league Yeni Malatya 1-0. Kasımpaşa got an important 3 points over Rizespor in that relegations game. Konya, this was a great comeback from Konya. They were 2-0 down to Kayseri in Kayseri and turned around and won 3-2. They hold on to second position and actually will be playing Fener in a second versus third clash next week. Adana Demir Sivas, for those who have did get a chance to see this had everything this game. You had goal cancellations, penalty decisions, goals, Mario Balotelli scoring and then scoring another, that being cancelled. There was 5 goals, and it saw a Brazilian in Enrique scoring a hat-trick and Sivas getting all 3 points, 3-2. Nuri Şahin getting one over Emre in a delayed Başakşehir Antalya Spor fixture. And Giresunspor getting another important 3 points in their fight for survival, 2-1. And we'll take it to the fixtures coming up next week. We've got, and I'm going to throw it back to you guys. We've got Fatih Karagümrük hosting Kayseri, Rize playing Trabzonspor, Malatya, Kasımpaşa, Rize, Trabzonspor. Guys, is there any one of these fixtures, Mehmet, I'll throw it to you. What are the fixtures to look out for next week?
Yeah. Are we doing one for the punters?
Let's do one for the punters. I think with you, it's always the case.
It's always the case. So, Batuhan, being the new guy, I'll explain what we do here. We just we throw in a few scores that we think will happen, one for the punters, and if they win, they give us 10% of their winnings. All right, so the ones to watch, obviously, the Karadeniz Derby, Rizespor, Trabzonspor always have beef between them. I think that's going to be an interesting one. No matter how bad Rizespor is or how good Trabzonspor is year in, year out, we generally see these games be played not necessarily with low scores, but there's not much of a big difference between the two teams. So I'm going to call it Trabzonspor a 2-1 win for Trabzonspor. Another game to watch out for, I think Adana Demir Başakşehir. Adana Demir has been in shaky form recently, and so has Başakşehir. So I think it's a clash of the ex-Titans, I want to call them, because both want to get back up to where they were. Obviously, Başakşehir isn't as bad, but going forward, Beşiktaş Hatayspor, I think Hatayspor will take that game. If I'm going to be honest, Antalyaspor Giresunspor. I want to say Giresunspor to win that game only because Nuri Şahin has a thing of beating big teams and then losing to the bottom half. So he's just defeated Başakşehir, and I think he'll lose to Giresun at home. It's a part of the DNA. Galatasaray Gaziantep. I think Galatasaray's got that. They've got that rhythm now. They've got something going. So I think Galatasaray will come out on top against Gaziantep. And Fenerbahçe Konya. It's probably the hardest game to call, but probably the game to watch, the game of the week to watch. I want to say that this game is going to finish a draw, probably 1-1.
There you have it with Mehmet's predictions. Batuhan, take us through your predictions.
Yes, some interesting fixtures here. I think with Fatih Karagümrük and Kayseri, I think Fatih Karagümrük will be winners of that one. I'm predicting a 1-0 score. The Karadeniz derby, Trabzon, Rize. That's going to be an interesting one. But I think Trabzon will come out 3-1 winners. I think that could be a bit of an easy cruise. Yeni Malatya and Kasımpaşa. I think Kasımpaşa will take that. Adana Demir and Başakşehir is going to be an interesting game, but I think Adana Demir will probably turn it around. And I can see them coming out with 2-0 winners. Göztepe Alanya. I think I'm going to give this one to Alanya. Beşiktaş Hatay. I think Beşiktaş will most likely come out winners of this one. 1-0. Antalya Giresun. I mean, look, Nuri Shine's been up and down, as you sort of said. So they're going to be playing at home. I'm going to give it to Antalya. Also, I'm Antalyalı as well, so that's why I'll give it to them. Sivas Altay is going to be an interesting game, I think. But I think Altay could potentially come out, but it could also end in a 1-1 draw. Antep Galatasaray is very close to the call because they're sort of at a similar table, but that's a tricky one, to be honest. I feel like it might go towards Antep. I don't think Galatasaray has had the best run on the aways.
Antep's usually strong at home in those fixtures.
Yeah, I mean, plus you're coming out from a Barcelona game as well, so it's going to be very interesting. But as Mehmet said, week of the match, Fener Konya. I'm going to give this one to Konya.
Oh, there you have it. So maybe let's give that one as the game of the week to call there. Konya Sport. I'm going to say Fenerbahce is going to win that game. Mehmet saying draw and Batuhan saying a Konya win. I think Allah will get up. Beşiktaş will win and Trabzonspor will win their games this week. Let's quickly have a look at the table. Let's see what all these results mean. Trabzonspor standing firmly on top at with 70. Konyaspor following 55, Fenerbahce 50, and we've sort of got a battle between four teams for that European places. Going down to the bottom, Galatasaray sort of steered clear away from relegation now. They're mid-table, and the interesting games will be sort of following these teams like Göztepe, Altay, Giresun as they sort of continue their struggles in staying up the league. We'll follow closely with games going on this week. We'll move on to the women's fixtures and results from this past week as well. Fenerbahce coming out winners again comfortably 4-0. We saw Ereğli Belediyespor 3-0 winners, Kireçburnu 1-0, Kocaeli 3-2 away, a 0 draw for Antalya and Ankara. Beşiktaş getting an important 3 points to Fatih Vatan. Let's see what this means on the table now in Group A. Beşiktaş still sit on top, and Fenerbahce following them closely. Look at that goal difference, 46 each. So it's only 3 points in it. Let's move on to Group B, let's have a look at the fixtures. Fenerbahce is traveling away to Ankara. Fatih Vatan's traveling to Ataşehir. Ahmet's hosting Antalya. Kocaeli will be hosting Kireçburnu, Altay playing Ereğli, and Beşiktaş will round the week up with Hatayspor. Let's move on to Group B. Mems, did you want to take us through the results in Group B?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sivasspor lost 4-1 to Hakkari at home. Trabzonspor, who have been having a shaky season, 1-1 against İlkadın Belediyespor. Rizespor defeating Adana İdmanyurt 3-1. Kayserispor losing 6-0 to Konak Belediye at home. Galatasaray, yes, they did struggle, but a 2-1 win against Fatih Karagümrük. And ALG Spor, another big win, this time against Dudullu, who are sort of bottom of the table, or second last, if I'm not wrong. And ALG is obviously one of the top teams. So moving on to the table, as we can see, ALG 10 wins and 2 draws, still undefeated. A a goal difference of 60. They haven't conceded a goal this year, which is ridiculous. They've been one of the top teams in women's football in Turkey over the years, but you'd expect a bit more of a challenge, wouldn't you? Fatih Karagümrük and Adana İdmanyurdu also in the top three. Galatasaray. So obviously we've got a special focus on Galatasaray because of our friend Büşra Kenet, who plays for the club. They're sitting in sixth right now. They have their good patches, they have their bad patches, and they're in sixth spot. And obviously you need to finish in the top four to play finals. They're only 4 points off, but the second half of the league has started, so it's going to be an interesting one for Galatasaray. Trabzonspor sitting in eighth, right behind Çaykur Rizespor. And obviously the bottom of the table is Sivasspor, Dudullu, Kayserispor, and İlkadım, who have yet to register a win this season. Coming into next week's games, Hakkari will host Galatasaray in what I would call a blockbuster, a top four blockbuster. Adana İdmanyurdu will be hosting Sivasspor. Rizespor will be playing away in İzmir against Konak Belediyespor. Karagümrük to host Dudullu. ALG against Trabzonspor. Will they concede their first goal? Is the question. It's not even will they lose their first game. And lastly, İlkadım Belediye to host Kayserispor.
There you have it. And most coaches would like to see that sight of 60 goals scored, 0 goals conceded after 13 league games.
That's exactly right.
That's a great sight to see. Thank you, boys, for being on board. Thank you. Welcome again to Batuhan. It's been great having you on today's show. Looking forward to seeing the rest of you guys in weeks to come. And before we say goodbye, we've got a goal here scored in the women's game, which will bid you farewell. Have a good night to all our followers.
See you guys.
Şehirde kaptan Hacer. Şimdi Şamika. Kenya alabilecek mi önüne? Kenya'dan çok şık bir hareket. Kenya corner. Harika hareketler ve 2-0. 43. dakikada Kenya corner. Müthiş sıyrıldı ve farkı 2'ye yükselten gole imza atıyor.